types of conflict. The plot thickens. So what's a conflict? A conflict is a problem that the main character or characters face. For example, an Arctic adventurer struggles to survive hunger and cold. A brother and sister fight over control of the television. Every story worth reading has a conflict. Otherwise, it would be boring. If there is no conflict, there is no tension. Some stories might have multiple conflicts. So here's an overview of the types of conflicts that we can have. There are 6 of them. We have person versus person, person versus self, person versus society, person versus nature, person versus supernatural, and person versus technology. So let's talk about person versus person. The central character in person versus person faces opposition from another person or maybe a group of people. So for example, 2 girls might compete for the same role in the school play, or a ninja warrior fights a rival clan to avenge his master's death. So we have 2 girls against each other, that would be person versus person. And we have a ninja warrior against another ninja warrior rival clan, that's also for person versus person. Person versus self. The central character faces an internal struggle. For example, a young man goes through hard times after losing his father in a car accident. So that means he's struggling against himself. He's struggling against his conflict with losing his father. The second example, an Olympic athlete pushes his performance to the limit despite his physical disability. Okay, so the athlete is struggling against his own personal physical disability. That's person versus self. Next, we have person versus society. The central character or group of characters battles against traditions, institutions, or laws. For example, a student takes his fight against the school dress code all the way to the Supreme Court. So that means the student is against the school dress code. And then we have a group of students protest in front of a university known for its unfair and racially motivated admission practices. So a group of students against a university. Person versus nature. The central character struggles against animals, maybe the elements of nature, or other natural forces. So that could even include like earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, anything like that. For example, a castaway washes up on an island and must learn to survive with the available resources. So the castaway against living on an island by himself. A ship captain pursues a great white whale through stormy seas. So a captain against a whale. Person versus supernatural. The central character is challenged by forces that are not of this world. For example, a boy wizard must use his powers to protect his community from evil monsters. So the person is the boy, and the supernatural is the evil monsters. And a group of teenagers sleep in a haunted house and begin disappearing one by one. So the person is the group of teenagers, and the supernatural is what is haunting the house. Next, we have person versus technology. The central character struggles with or against the forces of technology. For example, a group of strangers gets stuck in an elevator, so it's the group of strangers versus the elevator. And a teenage boy is pursued by robots from space that transform into cars. Person is teenage boy. The technology is the space robots that transform into cars. Now let's practice. You're going to read each description and identify the antagonist, which is the evil opposing force, and the type of conflict. So, for example, We have an archaeologist attempts to escape a hidden temple overrun by a vampire army. The antagonist is the vampire army. The conflict type would mean that it's a person versus supernatural, because vampires are supernatural. Okay, first example. An elderly man struggles to learn how to use his new phone. If we had to guess, our elderly man is going to be our protagonist. And who's the elderly man against? His new phone, which would be our antagonist. So our answer would be person versus technology. The new phone being, again, the antagonist. Our next example. Two boxers who were formerly friends compete for the championship belt. So we have two boxers. One boxer is the protagonist, one boxer would be the antagonist. So that would be person versus person. And our last example. A young woman fights to gain admittance in an elite prep school that was only for boys. So we have our young woman, which is our protagonist, and the elite prep school would be our antagonist. So it would be person versus society.